When Xiaoshan was 6 or 7 years old, he followed his grandfather back to their hometown deep in the Daba Mountains to visit relatives. The place was extremely remote, nestled among layers of mountains. That night, the relatives arranged for them to stay, with Xiaoshan and his grandfather sharing a room. The window faced a winding path outside, which led to a small stream at its end. The surroundings were desolate with no signs of life. That night, Xiaoshan couldn't sleep. Around 1 or 2 in the morning, the dogs outside suddenly started barking frantically, waking his grandfather. In those days, thieves were common in the mountains, so his grandfather, suspecting an intruder, got out of bed, grabbed a carrying pole from behind the door, turned on the dim yellow light at the entrance and shouted from the threshold, "Who's passing by? Say something." He called out twice, but the dark wilderness remained silent. His grandfather stood cautiously at the door, scanning the surroundings. Xiaoshan, huddled under the blanket, stared intently at the window facing the path. Not long after his grandfather's shouts, a figure in a white shirt clearly passed by the window along the path. With lights on both inside and outside, Xiaoshan saw it vividly. But his grandfather later said he saw nothing. That single incident terrified Xiaoshan, keeping him awake all night. For years afterward, just thinking about it sent chills down his spine. This story is meant to introduce Xiaoshan's grandfather. Before retiring, he was a middle school principal who taught Chinese. After retirement, he became fascinated with studying the I Ching, and even became something of a fortune teller. With that background set, let's get to the main story. In the Daba Mountain area, particularly in northeastern Sichuan, older folks know that in the 1970s and 1980s, there were tales of luocha, a type of malevolent spirit. The elders said that if a grave didn't grow grass for 3 years after a person's death, the deceased could turn into a monster covered in red fur with long black sharp nails. This creature, resembling a zombie, would break out of the ground. It was said that the first thing a luocha did was to devour its closest kin, then return to hide in its coffin or grave. Luocha couldn't stand light and would come out at night to worship the moon, kowtowing for 49 days. Once its powers grew stronger, it could roam during overcast days or at dusk, harming people. Xiaoshan's grandfather explained that a luocha wasn't exactly a ghost, but a cursed entity existing outside the 3 realms. When a luocha appeared in an area, it was like a plague, a calamity of the human world that even gods and temples couldn't stop. If your relative turned into a luocha, hiding in a temple wouldn't help. It would still come for you. The only way to deal with it was to hire a Duanggong master, a local term in Sichuan for a Taoist priest. Legend has it that to become a Duanggong, one must apprentice under a master and seek enlightenment. This often meant sitting alone in a desolate graveyard all night, supposedly to ponder life but likely to commune with unseen entities. To open the heavenly eye and see things invisible to ordinary people, one had to wash their eyes with dew from grave grass every midnight for 49 days. Success was marked when spirits began to avoid you, indicating you'd gained some power. Of course, these are just stories. Don't take them seriously or try them. And Duanggong also needed to master drawing talismans. Their ability to subdue spirits depended on the efficacy of these talismans. To deal with a fully formed luocha, and Duanggong would act at noon, when the sun was fiercest, chanting a binding spell, driving a sharpened peachwood stake into the luocha's heart, and then burning it to ashes. If the luocha hadn't fully formed, reburying it in a place with good feng shui would suffice. Unlike zombies, which form in places with heavy yin energy and poor feng shui, a luocha arises in a site with excessively good feng shui, where the deceased can't handle the overwhelming fortune, turning it into a curse. Xiaoshan said that in the 1960s and 1970s, luocha incidents were rampant in the Daba Mountains. Poverty meant people couldn't afford feng shui masters, so they buried the dead haphazardly, often leading to trouble. In 1976, Xiaoshan's grandfather was still teaching at the local middle school, serving as vice principal and homeroom teacher for a first-year class. One night, while on duty, another teacher rushed to him, saying a student was suffering severe stomach pain. With no transportation and the nearest clinic dozens of miles away, they couldn't get help in the middle of the night. Xiaoshan's grandfather checked on the student and had the teacher give him water boiled with pepper leaves, a local remedy for stomachaches, hoping to send him to the clinic at dawn if he didn't improve. Tragically, the student passed away before morning. The school notified the family, who took the body back for burial. Years later, Xiaoshan's grandfather still felt heavy-hearted when mentioning the student, named Chen something. Strange things started happening soon after the burial. First, livestock at the Chen household and nearby began crying and howling at night for no reason. Then family members fell ill. In the mountains, such events naturally led to suspicions of supernatural causes. The Chen family suspected the grave's feng shui was bad, and invited a local shaman to perform a water bowl reading. The shaman sprinkled rice into a bowl of clear water, and the floating rice grains formed patterns that revealed answers. She concluded that the student's death occurred at an inauspicious hour and the burial site was impure, likely leading to a luocha transformation. Skeptical, the Chen family consulted other diviners, but all gave the same warning. In Xiaoshan's hometown there was a renowned Duangong named Master Xia, skilled in exorcisms, healing, rituals, and even walking in the underworld. He was also a friend of Xiaoshan's grandfather. The Chen family sought his help, since moving a body after burial required an auspicious date, and the student's death coincided with an inauspicious white tiger star. Local custom forbade disturbing a new grave within 100 days. The exhumation was set for 3 months later at night. On the day of the exhumation, word spread that the student might turn into a luocha, drawing a crowd from nearby villages. Xiaoshan's grandfather was there. A dozen people held torches to light the way for Master Xia, who performed rituals, chanted, and burned paper offerings. When the coffin was opened, everyone gasped. The student's body hadn't decayed. The skin was still elastic, and white fur was growing on the face, a clear sign of a forming luocha. More terrifyingly, when Master Xia stabbed a sharpened wooden knife into the corpse's heart, it sat up abruptly. The onlookers scattered in panic, dropping their torches, and even Xiaoshan's grandfather fled in fear. Master Xia shouted, "Pick up your torches and hold them high. This thing hasn't fully formed yet." A few brave souls, including Xiaoshan's grandfather, tremblingly retrieved their torches and regrouped. In the firelight, they saw thick black blood oozing from the knife wound in the corpse's heart. Under Master Xia's direction, they bound the body with red ropes soaked in chicken blood, attached talismans, resealed the coffin, and reburied it in a new location with altered feng shui. Afterward, Master Xia confided to Xiaoshan's grandfather that the corpse sitting up startled him too. It was his first time seeing such a thing come to life. This was the first luocha story Xiaoshan's grandfather witnessed. The second occurred earlier in 1959, involving Xiaoshan's great-grandfather, who lived by a river and guarded a collective fish pond to prevent theft. One night, while smoking his pipe by the pond, he saw a figure walking up the hillside across the river. In the moonlight, the figure seemed familiar but too far to identify. Assuming it was someone with urgent business, he didn't think much of it and went to sleep in his shack. In the middle of the night, he woke hazily to find the same figure standing at the shack's entrance, staring at him. His heart sank as he recognized Old Qin, who had recently drowned in a boating accident. Old Qin lived on the hillside at Qinjiaba. Terrified, Xiaoshan's great-grandfather couldn't move, as if pinned down. Old Qin's spirit spoke faintly, "I'm going home to find my wife." Then it turned and left. When Xiaoshan's great-grandfather shared this with the family, they feared for Old Qin's erratic wife, who often threatened suicide during their frequent quarrels. Sure enough, a month later, she died by drinking pesticide. With no surviving kin, the cooperative provided a simple coffin and buried her in an isolated grave on the back hill, without any feng shui rituals. Years later, while building a reservoir, someone spotted a red-furred creature dart from behind a rock into the forest at dusk. Locals called it a man-bear, a legendary creature said to grab people's arms, sleep, and then eat them. To escape, one had to trick it into grabbing a bamboo pole instead. The next day, Kingiaba villagers armed with shotguns hunted for the creature but found nothing. Meanwhile, people began disappearing mysteriously. Investigations yielded no clues until a rainstorm dislodged a boulder that cracked open Old Chin's wife's grave, revealing an undecayed body covered in red fur. A luocha. The missing people were likely its victims. The villagers summoned Ndwangong, who burned the luocha at noon under a blazing sun, chanting a binding spell. The fire crackled with eerie squeals, chilling those present. The last time Xiaoshan discussed luocha with his grandfather was during a college summer break. He asked why such stories were rare now. His grandfather explained that urban areas, with their strong yang energy, suppress such phenomena, unlike the rural past with sparse populations and heavy yin energy. He quoted an old saying, "Monsters arise in chaotic times." In today's peaceful era, such evils had faded. Xiaoshan's grandmother chimed in with her own childhood tale, not of luocha but of a ghost that compelled people to eat mud. She said if you saw someone frantically stuffing mud into their mouth, you should slap them 3 times to snap them out of it, or they'd be in grave danger. Her neighbor's elderly mother once woke to her son's commotion, thinking he was arguing with his wife. She called out to stop, but the noise grew worse. Checking his room, she found her daughter-in-law asleep but her son missing. They found him under a tree, digging up soil and shoving it into his mouth while cursing. "I'll kill you." The old woman, experienced in such matters, rushed over and slapped him 3 times. He collapsed silent. Neighbors helped carry him to bed, and Ndwangong was called the next day. The son later recovered, saying he'd woken to see a thief climb through the window, fought it, and chased it outside. To others, he was alone, eating mud in a frenzy. The final story was Xiaoshan's grandfather's own experience in 1983. While returning home from a meeting in the county at 8 p.m., he had to walk a long mountain road. Around midnight, passing a road under construction where someone had recently been killed by a falling rock, he heard sand falling on his head, though nothing was there. The sound followed him. At a small earth god temple, he stopped to smoke, but his matches wouldn't light. Boldly, he spoke to the air. "Hold on, let me finish this cigarette, okay?" Strangely, the match lit immediately. After smoking, he said, "Let's go." But the sand sound resumed, trailing him. Near a house, a rabid dog lunged from the shadows. He dodged behind a woodpile, throwing stones until it fled. Oddly, the sand sound stopped. Continuing, he saw a figure ahead on a field path, wearing a headscarf and blue clothes, carrying a basket. He called out, but the figure didn't respond, maintaining a constant distance despite his efforts to catch up. At a graveyard near his home, the figure vanished into the woods. Following, he found himself trapped in a ghost wall, walking in circles. Sitting on a mound, he marked it with a branch and smoked. At dawn, he escaped the woods. The next day, he saw the mound was a lone grave. He later wondered if the dog hadn't delayed him, he might have caught the figure, and ended up like the mud-eating man bewitched at the graveyard.